I just wrapped up a mega project at work and I'm so relieved. The last few months have been really intense for me and I feel lighter now that the end of the year is here and I'm in a reflective mood. If you're new here and you're looking for a succinct and to the point video, I should warn you that this won't be it. I'm feeling kind of tired and a little rambly, and I am not sure how coherent my thoughts are going to be today, but I do want to take some time to reflect on where I started at the beginning of this year in terms of the books that I was in and where I'm ending the year off with in terms of the books that I'll be wrapping up December with. I've got a big mug of tea. The label fell off, but this is my favorite wild sweet orange Tazo tea. And I've got a stack of books beside me, so let's just get right into it. I'll show you the stack of books that I started the year off with. So this is where we were at the beginning of the year. And I will start, I guess I'll start from smallest to largest. So the first book is actually two books, is my planner system. I started out the year in this book, and you can see that I have actually stayed in this book the entire year. So it was halfway through last year that I switched from the system that I was in, which was a cousin and a traveler's notebook. So I was using the Hobonichi cousin as my kind of main planner, I guess, and I was using the weekly section in the way that I use the weekly supplement. Yeah. And so I was using my TN as a rolling to-do list. When I moved into this A6 halfway through last year, I started just having a daily to-do list on each page, which I found a lot easier. This system has been wonderful and I really love it. If I have a chance, I will do a full flip through at the end of the year or maybe early next year. But I am moving into a different system next year and I'll talk about that in a future video. But this was my planning system and it has served me very well. So yeah, this is what I started out the year with as my planner. I'll talk about these two together. These are two Hobonichi weeks that I started the year off with. This one was my health and wellness tracker, and this was my meal planner / media tracker because I did get a mega and I had a lot of pages. So I thought it would be a good place to track my media consumption. So this is my health and wellness tracker. This was basically a rinse and repeat from my health and wellness tracker in 2024. And basically I used the calendar pages to mark down my social engagements. And then I used the weekly pages to track things like weather, what I was eating, habits, different types of things I wanted to track, and symptoms for different health things that I was tracking. And I actually really love this system a lot, and I think it works really well, and I would recommend it to anyone who's looking to spend more time, I guess, tracking these types of things. At the same time, I also know that some people find tracking to this level very stressful. And so I would say only do something like this if you think it would be helpful and not harmful for you. And for me, it was really helpful to track on a weekly basis how things were going so that I could see if I needed to make any changes. And something like my chronic condition, it can feel like things aren't improving if you're constantly struggling with it. And so just tracking the minor changes for me personally, was helpful in those moments where I just wanted to know that I was getting better or that things would change. But I have heard other people say that tracking something chronic can be very, can make them feel worse, because it can feel kind of like you're on a hamster wheel and you're just tracking the same thing day in and day out, and it sort of feels pointless to an extent. So I really think it depends on what is helpful for you. And for me, it was helpful to see the minor changes, but I understand for others it's actually counterproductive. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I honestly didn't have a problem updating it on a weekly basis. And even as I flip through this now, I do kind of miss this format. I think it's a really great use of the Hobonichi weeks. This was one of the bad paper weeks, and so you can see in a few spots where I had quite a lot of bleed through depending on the ink that I was using. Yes, you can see here, I'm not sure if you can, but there was quite a lot of bleed through, and there was a lot of like blooming when I used my, like these are mostly all extra fine fountain pens, but it doesn't look like it because of how much the paper like absorbed the ink. So I think that is, I don't know, I just didn't have as good of a time in this book as I did last year. So that is my health and wellness tracker. This is my meal tracker, or my meal planner. So this is where I was planning all of my meals, planning my shopping lists. I started adding photos of meals that I cooked, or meals that, like different food related things that were on my photo stream, which I found really fun because I just have a lot of these photos in my photo stream anyway, and it was kind of fun to have a place to put them. And then in the back, I was tracking TV shows and movies that I watch, mainly with my partner, and we would do a little summary and add some of our own notes on what we liked or disliked about it. And I don't know, it was just a nice way to reflect a little more deeply on what we were consuming. And sometimes when I track just the titles of things, I just don't really have a lot of memory of how I felt or what we thought of whatever we consumed. And so I just like that this was kind of an opportunity to slow down and reflect a little. And I will confess that I did fall a little bit behind on keeping up with this. I find this really valuable. Like, we watched The Man in the High Castle this year. We finished this, I think, sometime around the summer, and it's hard to believe that that is something that we watched this year. And also, it's good to have kind of thoughts on what resonated with us, because it was such a powerful show. And if I didn't do this, I don't think I would really remember. So I find this really valuable. I'm still deciding if I want to use this format next year, because I do want to do some form of media tracking, but I haven't fully decided yet. So I'm not going to make any bold decisions for now. But this format, by the way, was taken from Himawari Stationery. So I did not come up with this format myself. I think this is pretty much exactly how she set it up. So I wanted to give credit to her for putting this together, because I thought it was a really nice and easy to update format. That's how I was using these two books. Okay, next we have my beautiful and prized Traveler's Notebook. This thing is super chunky, but this was my journal. I started out this year as this being my main journal, and I had 3 inserts. The first one was a vertical weekly, which is still here, and that was more for, I guess, like creative memory keeping. I had an insert that was a blank grid insert, and that was my stream of consciousness journal. And then I had a third insert, which was a sticker release insert. And I guess I can show you. It's a little different now, the way that it's set up, but it's very similar. Just have a bunch of stickers in this inner pocket. I took this out because these are getting really chunky, and I find they're a little easier to work with when they're not like in here. But I had a vertical weekly, so I started out the year with the first half, and this was something that I was just using as a kind of like creative memory keeper. Currently this is more of a kind of scrapbooky style insert, but I did have more of a plain pen only stream of consciousness journal that was in here that I was using. And then my third one insert was this sticker release insert that I use all the time. So yeah, I love having it in there. And then here's just sort of overflow stuff that I like to keep with my journal. And usually I have a bunch of washi tape samples here, but for some reason these are empty. But yeah, this was my journal, and I love this thing. It is really chunky, which I don't love. I'm not someone who really enjoys like very chunky books. And so I do think I will be making some changes to my setup for next year, but that was kind of how we started the year. So this was my journal. Next we had my Hobonichi cousin, and I have such an attachment to the cousin because it was the first planner that I used and was consistent in and actually felt enhanced my life, as opposed to I used to feel like I was working for my planners and I would always fall off of them and never stay with them. But the Hobonichi was the first planner where I felt like it was working for me, and I really felt like I was a more productive person, and it was just the right mix of I guess memory keeping and planning, because originally when I was using it, I was using the weekly pages as memory keeper and scheduling. So I would kind of have this visual layout of all of my meetings. The way I use my weekly supplement now, I was using it exactly that way in the cousin. And then I was using the daily pages as a space to take notes for longer meetings, or if I was doing like light research or whatever. So I was just a huge fan of the cousin. And when I switched away from it halfway through last year, I kept using the daily pages as my notes, and I was playing around with different ideas for how I could use the weekly vertical pages. And so I think I just kind of picked one up for 2025 because I just felt so attached to it, and I thought maybe I would still use it as a notes page, which I did for a lot of the year. That is the cousin. I guess I was kind of considering this as like a workbook. So not so much a planner, but more of a workspace or a workbook, which in hindsight, it's a very expensive book to be using as a workbook. And last but not least, this is my 5-year Hobonichi. And I started this in 2023, so we are coming to the end of my 3rd year, which is wild. I think I did a video on it kind of recently, just to show you how I use it. It's very plain. It's not really the most like colorful or artistic, but it's basically just a really great space for me to note down what's going on during my day. It's nothing fancy. It's mostly just facts. It doesn't, there aren't really that many rules other than like, usually it's just what happened that day. And sometimes that's how did I feel that day? Sometimes it's what did I do? Sometimes it's what did I eat? Sometimes it's inks that I picked up or, stickers that I made. So I really love this book. I think it's humongous. Like, I do think it's a big book. And when I finish this, I am going to rethink whether I want to get another A5 size. But you can see, like, it's not really that chunky. And I do appreciate that it has stayed pretty much as thin as it was when I first got it. So this was another book that I started out 2025 with. So now I'm going to talk about how things evolved and where that led me to where I am today and what I'm ending 2025 with. So the first shift is around July, I decided to do a one book July experiment, and I truly thought that it was just going to be an experiment and that I was going to end the year in the same books that I started with, because technically everything was working great. But I was just feeling a little bit, I guess maybe a bit bored. And I was also thinking for next year in 2026, I had it in my head that I probably wanted to just consolidate some of my books into one, and I thought maybe doing the experiment in 2025 would be good, because then it could set me up for what I would eventually do, what I would eventually decide for 2026. I took my meal planning and I integrated that into my weekends, and so I noticed that I was barely using my Saturday and my Sunday daily pages in my A6, because I don't really do work on the weekends, or I try not to do any planning on the weekends. And so I was using these pages for like currently inked, or I was sometimes doing like ink swatches and things like that just to, use up the page. But I realized that I could actually repurpose these pages for a more functional reason. Or I could turn these into something that was a little more functional. And so I kind of took my meal planning, which were the main things were a shopping list and meal ideas. So I was able to take the components like the shopping list into my Saturday before the week of the weeks that I was meal planning. And then when it came to planning the nights that I would cook based on events that I had going on that week, I was able to leverage my weekly supplement. And so now I just use the bottom here to write down what I'm planning on cooking. And I really like it because I have all of my events right here. And so I'm able to plan around that instead of having to, write it down separately over here. Now, I think this is really helpful if you have multiple schedules to plan for. For me, it's mostly my partner and me. And so it's a lot easier for me to do this in one book. But I do think that if you have like multiple schedules, this would actually be a lot more space. And I know Leanne from Leanne Likes has recently adapted this in her Hobonichi weeks. And I think she has a really great use case for why it might be helpful to do meal planning in a separate book, depending on your household composition. And so I realized that I didn't really need this much space for me personally, and this works out really great. But I think if I had multiple schedules to be constantly planning for, that would be a different story. I was able to move my meal planning into my Saturday pages. And then when it comes to my Sunday pages, I decided to turn that into tracking the main things that I wanted to track from my health and wellness. So you can see here that I was actually able to take pretty much this entire chart, which was the most important piece of my health and wellness tracker, and I was able to fit that on my Sunday page. Maybe a little less room for notes and reflections, but I haven't really been feeling like I absolutely needed, space every day anymore. And I stopped tracking my meals. I found it helpful for a while because I suspected that my diet might be triggering my skin issues. So I felt that it was helpful to track those things. But after a while, I just didn't feel like doing it anymore. So I'm not missing this too much. And I used to track the weather as well. Let's say you have a string of like rainy days. I think that can be helpful sometimes to give me a clue as to why, I might be feeling a little off. I guess that's one thing that I can't do on this page, but that's fine with me. I mean, I could technically track things on daily pages, or what I do now is I tend to track it on my monthly pages. So that's another way that I can kind of get a fuller view of what's going on. So personally, I still think this is wonderful, and I could totally see myself using a Hobonichi Weeks again in the future as a health and wellness tracker. But for this year, and I guess heading into 2026, I have just decided to step away from having a separate book for it, mainly just because I have been wanting to simplify my lineup. And so it kind of makes me happy to fit everything in here. It's one book that I have to carry around. It really has like everything that I need, and anything in the back of these that I was tracking, I was able to move into the notes pages of my A6. And so again, it just keeps things simple, because I just keep this book with me all the time, whether I'm at my desk or whether I'm in my living room on my coffee table. This book is nearby, so I only have to reach for this book if I want to track things. And my dog has been not doing so well over the last few months, so I have really needed to have my notes pages. I have really needed to track different medications that I'm giving him each day, and just having all of this stuff at my fingertips instead of having to think, oh, I'm going to the doctor, I need to bring this book, has just been really helpful for this stage of my life. But there was a time when I was having so many health issues that they were consuming my life, and I felt that having a separate book to kind of get in the mindset of tracking and trying to remind myself that things will get better was helpful for me in a different way. And when I went to the doctor, and I went to so many doctors last year, just having this separate book and having everything really accessible, like I didn't have to flip through a bunch of different pages, and I was able to just take notes and recall things and show things to the doctor, that was really helpful too. So I think depending on your stage of life or what's going on, different systems are going to work for you at different times. And I would say last year, having a book separate was just essential for keeping myself sane. This year, I feel like I'm in a bit of a better place health-wise than I was last year. So I'm feeling better about keeping things in here. So that was the major change, which was going from, I guess, like 4 books on a regular basis down to just this book. And then the other change that I would say is around summer, Leanne and I started the Artist's Way. And as part of getting really excited about that, I ended up starting this Love and Trip TN, and I dedicated this to the Artist's Way. So you can see here, like I created a folder which I DIY'd with the packaging that came with this TN. I had all of my notes related to the Artist's Way in here. And then I had another insert that was notes that I was taking from the actual book. And then I had an insert that I dedicated to my morning pages. And I am on my 3rd insert since starting the Artist's Way. This is a Stalogy that I cut down very easily. I just used an X-Acto knife and very carefully just kind of ran over the edge until I managed to get through the whole book. And you can see here, like it's a pretty clean cut. I thought I might have to take it to Staples and get it cut or something, but it was actually very easy to do on my own. And then I just used a corner cutter to cut the edges, to round the edges. So yeah, I have been really enjoying having my kind of journal in a separate book. And so what I ended up doing was the journal insert that I had in here, I ended up taking it out because I wasn't really going to be journaling in here and in here on a regular basis. And so it's basically the same thing. It was always sort of stream of consciousness journaling, except I wasn't, trying to do it every single day. Like I wasn't putting like pressure on myself to do it every day. And I wasn't trying to get to 3 pages. I was just writing for, however long I wanted to write. And so this became an addition halfway through the year, and that has stuck. And then this has kind of turned into more of just a creative memory keeping. So I do have the 2 inserts. This one is, this first one is very much a, like, just fun, cheerful, whatever I feel like putting in here, and it tends to have a lot of pictures, and I really have enjoyed this practice. I have some, I guess there are some things about it that I don't love. Like I tend to wait until the end of the week before I can print my photos, because I like to print 4 photos on one of my Canon selfie photo papers. And so that means that I don't fill this out as the week goes on. I wait until the end of the week, and then I kind of do it all at once. And the problem with that is I do sometimes fall behind, and you will see that because I was so busy over the last few weeks, I fell quite behind. And now I feel very overwhelmed because I don't really know how I'm going to backfill this many pages, but because I have filled every other week since the year started, there is a stubborn part of me that just wants to finish it and have a completed second half of the year insert. So I think I will backfill it, but backfilling is not really that fun. I don't really enjoy it that much. The main change is that now this has become like vertical insert for my weekly memories, and then I have sort of like an overflow where I just have more stuff in here that I can't always fit in the weekly stuff. And then I do things like ink swatches when I feel like it. So it's very much like a whatever I feel like doing is how I use this second insert. And then we just have my sticker insert, which has stayed the same. So instead of having all of my journaling in one TN, it did split out into 2 TNs. I guess the last, perhaps maybe saddest change is that I started out the year, I was kind of using the monthlies, as you can see, as like a place for me to have ideas for YouTube videos. And then I was originally using the weeklies. I was kind of splitting them off into 4 sections, and I kind of had 4 sections. For example, my UX research work, my therapy work, YouTube, and Patreon. So that's kind of how I had envisioned using it. But in practice, it just didn't really work. I wasn't coming to here to plan. I wasn't using it. So I just kind of gave that up. And then I was using the daily pages for notes, especially, yeah. So you can see like I was using it, but I think partially because I just really disliked this paper. And also because for my UX research work, I stopped using this as notes. I would sometimes use these pages to take notes for longer meetings when I, needed to have more context. I realized that I wanted to keep that work separate. And as much as I like having everything in one, due to confidentiality and things like that, it's just better to keep that stuff separate, in my opinion. So either take notes on the cloud that is kind of provided by the company. And so everything just stays within the, the digital space of the company. Or if you're going to take any notes, take it on separate pieces of paper that you can shred. At least that's kind of my policy. And so I stopped using this for work notes. And then for a while, I was using it for like YouTube notes if I was reading articles and things like that. But as I got busier, I just haven't had as much time to do that to need a book like this that often. And then I tried using it as a place to swatch inks and just have fun. But this paper is just not that great. It's just not a great experience to work with. So I kind of didn't really want to use it for that either. So unfortunately, this book has just kind of been abandoned, and it's such an expensive book and I feel not great about it. So I've decided that I'm just going to keep this book, and if I ever get the urge to do like daily journaling in a cousin, because so many creators that I follow use a cousin and it's hard not to be inspired by them. I think it'll be nice if I ever get that urge and I want to kind of play around with it. I know that I have a book with quite a lot of empty pages that I can kind of play around with, because realistically, I don't think I'm ever really going to be like a daily journaler in this way. I love the idea of it. I love the idea of daily accountability. But if there's anything that I've learned about myself is I'm just not really a daily journaler. I think the best I can do is the 5-year journal, which is kind of daily. And even then I don't update it on a daily basis, although I'm thinking about changing that for next year. And I noticed that some people who do use this kind of layout don't necessarily put that pressure to journal on a daily basis either. But I think if I do want to do like A5 style journaling, then I could probably use a blank notebook. And I have plenty of A5 sized blank notebooks. So I think for now, I'm mostly going to stick with journaling in my traveler's notebooks, because I also have a lot of traveler's notebook inserts. If I ever have the desire to play around with this or try it out, then I know I can go back into this book and I can use these pages. It does make me kind of sad to have sort of failed so spectacularly in this cousin. But you know what? It's okay. I learned my lesson. I didn't buy a cousin for 2025. No, I didn't buy a cousin for 2026. And if something changes and I find myself wanting to go back in here, I can always go back in future years. But for now, I'm kind of in my like A6 era, and I just am craving smaller books. I'm craving tiny grids. I'm craving cream paper. So all of those things are not the cousin. And as much as I have such an emotional tie to the cousin, because it just worked so beautifully for me in a phase of my life where I needed to take lots of notes. I was in school. I found this was such a perfect system for helping me organize like assignments for school and things I needed to do in between work. Like it was just so perfect for what I used it for back in 2023. But after I graduated and after I, kind of shifted into a different phase of my life, it just wasn't really what I needed. So I did not buy one for 2026. It makes me sad. I think I'm going to repurpose this cover possibly for my little ink book or journal that I've been using lately for my little square swatch explorations, just so I can kind of keep using this cover, because I've had this cover for 3 years and it's taking a very long time to patina, which is probably because I don't really take it out of the house. So I think maybe if I'm just a little less precious with it and I keep using it, then it'll eventually develop more of that rich kind of caramel color that I'm hoping I'll see someday. So yeah, that is my cousin. So in terms of where we were, this is where we were at the beginning of the year. And then how we are finishing the year is, I'll see if I can kind of try to maneuver this. So we're taking this away. We're taking these two away. And we are adding in the TN. So my lineup for next year is going to look very similar, but that will be another video. I'm curious to know, what did you start your year off with, and how did your year end? Overall, it feels like I've simplified things a lot, which I'm very happy about. This kind of like 2-book system works really well, but I'm actually excited to try like a proper 1-book system for next year, because sometimes it just, when I'm really busy and I'm tired and feeling overwhelmed, the smallest things can feel like friction. And having this separate, like having this book separate, sometimes feels wonderful because I can kind of keep this open on my desk and always, you know, be able to see what my day is like. But other times don't feel like grabbing a second book. We'll see next year if I miss having these things separate or if I prefer to have them together, but that will be the great experiment for 2026. So I'm glad that I was able to put my meal planning and my health and wellness tracking all in one, and we'll see how I feel about continuing that on next year. And then, yeah, my journaling feels like it exploded a little more. And if anything, like my planning kind of got simplified, but my journaling got bigger. And I do actually have a few other books that I'm not talking about today that I use kind of like on an as needed basis. Like I have another TN that I dedicate for Happy Mail scrapbooking, I guess. And I don't really consider that journaling, but it is like a book on the side that I am using. And I have another TN that I use as a pen and ink log. So I have other books that are kind of there, but they're not really like active books that I'm always updating. I feel really happy with where my journaling is. Like I feel like I have a space to kind of vent and just get my thoughts out and process things. But then I also feel like I have a very joyful space to kind of reminisce and be playful and create a beautiful memory book for me to flip through that I can enjoy in future years. Even when I flip through my insert from the first half of the year, I feel such a strong sense of nostalgia when I see like things that I was doing in the beginning of the year and how our garden was looking in the middle of the year. So I'm really grateful for these 2 books. And then same thing for this 5-year. I feel like I haven't really, it's always kind of been in the background. And I think in 2026, I'm going to give it a little more love than I have been this year. I've been almost treating it like a homework assignment where I just need to catch up on my homework just so I can have like the 5-year, or I can have the memories kind of consecutively. And it's definitely up to date, but I think this is something that I want to put a little more love into for next year. So I will talk about that in my next video when I talk about my lineup for next year and some changes that I think I'll be making. But yeah, that's all from me for today. If you have any questions about anything I showed today, then feel free to leave them in the comments. If you're still here, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon in the next video.